Oh, Hilton, stay. Your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton, stay. A holiday you're saving.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. This season, enjoy spacious, comfortable rooms and friendly service when you book with Hilton instead. Hilton for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
By the way, we're officially on YouTube because so many of you say, I wish I would have heard this when I was younger. And the younger generation is living over there. So now, so are we. I am Nicole Khalil, and you're listening to the This Is Woman's Work podcast, where together we're redefining what it means, what it looks and feels like to be doing woman's work in the world today, with you as the decider. Whatever feels true and real and right for you, that's how you do woman's work. And we've been doing just that for 6 years and 375 episodes. And today, we're doing it by taking a victory lap. Not the perfectly choreographed Olympic medal kind, more like the sweaty, winded, I did not train for this, but here we are kind, that I would argue still counts because, friend, sometimes the hardest part isn't just showing up. And there are definitely things that are worth celebrating, and also some things that the best thing I can say about them is that we showed up and that we're still here. And that feels worth celebrating too. Listen, every year we highlight the episodes that resonated the most, the ones you listened to, shared, laughed, or cried with, yelled, yes, 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 while banging the steering wheel in your car, or maybe I just do that. Or you listen to it in fits and starts because you were distracted by a toddler, a dog, or the existential dread of your inbox. These episodes aren't just popular. They mark our year. They reflect what we were wrestling with, waking up to, what we were pissed off about, curious about, and what we were ready to change. And like everything else we do here, the best of is never just about the polished, edited moments that you hear. It's about what happened before we hit record, after we said goodbye, and everything in between. The tech crisis, the scheduling chaos, the bizarre timing of the universe, the moments that didn't make the cut, sometimes because something broke like the internet, and sometimes because something broke me. So buckle up. We're pulling back the curtain. And if the curtain falls mid-episode and I'm standing there in a state of undress with my ass hanging out, just know that would be very on brand for 2025. Okay, so we're going to start with what we're celebrating, because before we get into our top 6, we need to pause and acknowledge some things that happened this year. As of today, we're sitting at 1,991,458 downloads in 2025. Not a joke, that's an actual number. For those of you math wizards keeping score, that means we're 8,542 downloads away from 2 million downloads in 1 year, which feels wildly close and also like the perfect moment to ask for a very small, very reasonable favor. If you're willing, would you please share your favorite episode with some woman that you love? Or the next time you see the inevitable, I'm looking for a good podcast post floating around social media, would you tell them about this one? Listen, I love Mel Robbins and I love Brene Brown. They are amazing and their podcasts are so good. And they also do not need your help promoting their podcasts. Trust me. So if you're willing to help us cross that 2 million mark and close out the year strong, it would mean more than you know. And also, I want to put this in context. The most amount of downloads that we've ever done before was just over 834,000 downloads in all of 2024. And in our very first year, back in 2020, we had just under 10,000 downloads total for the entire year. Think about that for a second. This year, we have had days, and I'm asking you to help me today to have more people listen to the show in a single day than listen to it in our entire first year. At the start of the year, I set the goal of having 1.5 million downloads, and 1 million felt possible, but 1.5 felt borderline delusional. But why not set a big goal, right? And somehow, some way, here we are brushing up against 2 million, putting this show in the top 0.5% of all podcasts globally. Most of you listen in the US, but we also saw strong growth in the UK, Germany, Canada, and the Netherlands, which tells us that this conversation is resonating far beyond where it started. We made more money than we ever have before from the podcast. We joined the Airwave Network, a subsidiary of Warner Brothers, earlier this year and officially launched on YouTube later in the year. We also had more guest outreach than ever, which forced us to streamline and finally remove me from the process altogether after I put this in air quotes, helped too much and messed everything up for my team. So all in all, it has definitely been a year of growth and changes, but some things have also remained the same. The mission hasn't changed. The host didn't change. Our editor didn't change. And the guests are still absolutely knocking our socks off. So those are some of the wins, and here's the flip side, the part that I will not pretend away. Despite being our highest earning year, this podcast is still not profitable. I'm still investing more into it, into editing, production, and promotion than it brings in. The ads that you hear are covering some of the costs, but that's it. And our goal in 2026 is that this thing turns a profit, even if it's $1. Any amount in the green would feel like a goddamn victory at this point. After 6 years, you'd think we'd have podcasting figured out, right? But we don't. I don't. It still feels like we're wading through muddy water, learning as we go, often the hard way. Ratings and reviews still remain a challenge. With nearly 2 million downloads this year, we still have fewer than 500 reviews on Apple and under 100 on Spotify. And yes, we did lose about 900 reviews on Apple due to some sort of technical glitch that they acknowledge happened but have no solution for, which is super cool. But it is what it is. We are where we are. And on top of that, YouTube adds a whole new layer. More video editing, more production, more tech, more support, and the deeply inconvenient requirement that I now need to look moderately camera ready. There's like lighting and angles and setup, and all of it makes me feel like I don't know what I'm doing, right when I finally felt competent on the audio side. So the question becomes, why do I keep going? And trust me, I ask this question to myself often. And the answer is because I get to hear from listeners whose lives are impacted, shifted, or simply made lighter. Because I get to meet the most incredible, smartest women who are out there doing the most meaningful work, and I get to introduce them to you. Because I still have many moments where something lands in a new way that I needed to hear for me. And because of Nikki Burla, our editor since day one, who cares about this show at least as much as I do. Listen, I'm not driven by popularity and I don't want celebrity, which is a very good thing because I'm not either of those things. I am driven by something that matters. And every time I think about quitting, I come back to the mission, the topics, the guests, and to you, the listener who deserves something that is built with you in mind. I hope you feel that when you listen. I hope that you feel served when you show up and tune in to this podcast. I am so wildly aware you have so many choices, and I cannot possibly tell you how much I appreciate and just blown away when you choose to listen to this show. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And before I get too sappy and emotional, let me share with you the top 6 episodes of 2025. Sex is a skill, and like any skill, it can be learned, practiced, and mastered. Bet you never thought about it like that, right? Because somehow, somewhere, women were told we're supposed to magically know everything about sex, intimacy, desire, and pleasure. All, of course, while looking goddess-like. Meanwhile, nobody expects us to pick up a violin and play without a single lesson. And that's why Beducated exists. Think of it as the masterclass library your sex ed should have been. Over 150 courses created by top experts on everything from building real intimacy to exploring new territory. Whether you're thinking, I want more connection, or I want to change things up, or I just want to stop second-guessing what I'm doing, Beducated has you covered. And because it's December and it's so freaking cold, here's your chance to turn up the heat in the best way. Sign up for Beducated at beducate.me and use code WOMAN'SWORK to get 50% off the yearly pass locked in for life. Yes, forever. It also comes with a 14-day money-back guarantee, so it's completely risk-free. Click the link in show notes, get Beducated, and make this winter your hottest one yet. Pure Hydration has made a big difference for me, and apparently for JJ too, who is not only drinking more water, she's also giving away half her packets to teammates like she's running some sort of underground hydration ring. Honestly, I'm just glad they're drinking water, which is why I'm really excited to try Pure Energy. It's a plant-based energy drink mix with natural caffeine and electrolytes, so you get the boost and the hydration without the shakes and the jitters. With no added sugar or artificial junk, Pure Energy delivers a refreshing boost you can feel good about. I'm planning to use it during my afternoon slump when my brain really thinks it's time to be done for the day. And if it's anything like their hydration packs, I know it's going to be a game changer. And here's a bonus. Cure is FSA HSA approved, so you can use your FSA or HSA funds to stay hydrated and boost energy the smart way. For This Is Woman's Work listeners, you can get 20% off your first order at curehydration.com/womanswork with code WOMAN'SWORK. And if you get a post-purchase survey, make sure to let them know you heard about Cure right here. It really does help support the show. So don't just drink more water, upgrade it with Cure.
This episode is brought to you by Espolón Tequila. Slow, sticky, snoozy. They call these the dog days of summer. But Espolón? They don't do boring. Welcome to the Marg Days. Espolón Tequila. 100% blue Weber agave, born to shake up your summer. Just add lime, agave, and a little attitude. Visit espolontequila.com. Espolón Tequila, 40% alcohol, volume 80 proof. Copyright 2025 Campari America, New York, New York. Drink responsibly.
I have to say, there were so many great, epic episodes in 2025 that narrowing this down was super hard. So we let the numbers drive the decision. And at the end of the day, here's what I'll tell you is if you are listening to this podcast for the first time, any one of these episodes would be an epic place for your second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh listen. And if you missed any of these episodes, if you regularly tune in, I would highly encourage you to go back and listen. They are just so, so good. Okay. So the sixth most listened to episode of 2025 was episode 287, How is Your Spiritual Health with Dr. Lisa Miller. And I walked into this conversation deeply interested and also wildly overthinking it, which you'll hear is a fairly common thread throughout many of our episodes. In this case, it was because religion is personal, complex, and often can be polarizing. And I wanted to make sure that this episode felt inclusive while also not turning it into a reflection of my own beliefs. It felt sensitive, high stakes, and I was genuinely nervous about getting it right. And Dr. Lisa Miller met every concern with grace, openness, and research-backed clarity. She talked about spiritual health in a way that felt expansive, grounded, and accessible, not preachy and not dogmatic. My brain and my soul were high-fiving each other. And I hate to say this because it's a little too on the nose, but it felt spiritual. And now for the part that felt significantly less spiritual. The audio on this episode was rough. Internet connections were glitchy, and our team had to edit out huge chunks, including a beautiful live meditation that she had done at the end. Despite imperfect audio, despite losing the meditation, we still released this episode, and it's still one of our top 6 of the entire year, which is a humbling reminder that when the guest is this good and that the content actually matters, people care a lot less about perfection than we think they do. So do yourself a favor and go check out How is Your Spiritual Health, episode 287 with Dr. Lisa Miller. We'll put the link in show notes to this episode as well as all of our top 6, again, in show notes so that you can just go click and find them, or you can scroll and search whatever feels right for you. Our number 5 most listened to episode in 2025 was episode 271, How to Defy Expectations with Dr. Sunita Saw. This episode could have easily gone on twice as long. There were so many questions that I wanted to ask. And Sunita reframed defiance not as rebellion for rebellion's sake, but as a thoughtful, values-driven act, especially for women who've been conditioned to comply, accommodate, and stay quiet. It was one of those conversations that gave great language to moments I've felt in my own life, but hadn't fully understood yet. And unlike some of the other episodes on this list, there were no big tech glitches, no huge prep panic, unless you count the multiple pages of questions that I had prepared. But what I do remember most about this episode was my pure excitement. I could not wait to have this conversation because defying expectations is about as on brand as it gets for this show. If there were ever a topic that belonged here, it was this one. And it was so good. In fact, we held the release longer than we normally would so that we could put it out in January when we know new listeners are actively looking for great podcasts to add to their rotation. And honestly, if somebody didn't love this episode, they probably are never going to love the rest of the show, which is exactly why it earned its place on this list. I left this episode wishing we'd hit record earlier and stopped later. Again, that's How to Defy Expectations, episode 271 with Dr. Sunita Saw. And that brings us to number 4 on the list, which was episode 292 on How to Have a Good Death with Suzanne O'Brien. This was another challenging episode for me to prepare, which you'll begin to see was a bit of a running theme with many of our best episodes this year. And just to give you a quick behind-the-scenes look at how this all actually works, it starts with my team, who is incredible. They collect everything, the guest's bio, books, websites, interviews, links, and all the stuff, and they organize it all into our podcast tracker. From there, I take out what I know I'll need and move it into a Word doc about a week before the recording. And then I sit with the topic. What do I already believe, and what perspective or experience do I already have? And where might I be wrong? And most importantly, I try to put myself in your position. What would you want to hear? What are you probably already hearing everywhere else? And can we offer a different angle or a deeper perspective? I make notes throughout the week as things come to me. And then within about 24 hours of our actual recording, I sit down and write out my intro and closing, exactly how I would say it out loud. No polish, just me talking to you. All in, this typically takes me about an hour or so. And then because I don't want to sound like a complete lunatic, I run it through ChatGPT. Not for the writing part, but for the cleanup service. It helps me tighten things up, cut out what's too long or too wordy or maybe a little too ridiculous. Once it's final, though, I print my questions, load it into my teleprompter, and then we're ready to record. And a side note here, the thing that we get the most consistent positive feedback on from our guests is how we close out our episodes. So if you're not listening all the way through, you might actually be missing the best part. Anyway, on to our 4th most listened to episode of the year, which was another challenging one for me to prep and took way longer than normal because who wants to think about death on a random Tuesday at 2 p.m.? And honestly, what do I know about having a good death? What stopped me in my tracks was learning that Suzanne has helped over 1,000 patients have what she calls a good death. That was the moment I knew that I needed to pay attention because anyone who has sat with that many people at the end of their lives understands something most of us spend a lifetime avoiding. Suzanne demystifies death with calm honesty and compassion. She talks about it in a way that somehow makes you want to plan your end-of-life care as responsibly as you plan your next vacation. She came in ready to tell the truth, not sugar-coated, not fear-based, and I love a woman who doesn't flinch away from the hard conversations. And this episode motivated me to have conversations about my own death and with my parents that I had been avoiding. If it did the same for you, for that alone, it earned its place in our top 6. Again, the link to How to Have a Good Death, episode 292 with Suzanne O'Brien is in show notes, or you can just go find it. All right, Coming in at the number 3 spot is episode 313, The Hard Truths of Entrepreneurship with Dr. Darnell Jervey Harmon. And this episode is basically like my podcast trifecta: real, inspiring, and funny. I mean, it is literally my favorite combination, and it's a much harder balance to strike than people realize. On the surface, this is an episode about entrepreneurship. But what surprised us most is how many listeners reached out to say that they loved it, even though they're not entrepreneurs. Because at its core, this conversation wasn't just about building a business. It was about ambition, pressure, growth, resilience, self-trust, and what it costs emotionally and mentally to build anything that matters. Darnell told the hard truth without making us feel small. She let us know that we're not alone while also refusing to coddle us, and that's a rare balance. She didn't sugarcoat how messy entrepreneurship can be, but she also didn't glorify burnout or hustle for the sake of hustle. One of my friends texted me after listening to the episode and said something to the effect of, "Sand in the crotch is so accurate," and you'll have to listen to understand why we're talking about sand in the crotch. What ultimately makes this episode so powerful is that Darnell isn't just talking about success. She's talking about sustainability, about clarity instead of chaos, alignment instead of noise, and why mindset, mission, and money actually have to work together if something is going to last. She's helped clients generate over $500 million in sales, and she's built businesses that align with her values, her faith, and her vision. And yet, what landed most wasn't her resume, it was her honesty. The permission to admit that entrepreneurship can be lonely, often messy, and still deeply meaningful. And if you read my weekly emails, and if you don't and want to, you can sign up at NicoleKhalil.com or use the link in show notes. But anyways, if you read my weekly emails, you know that a couple times a year, I kind of unravel and I seriously consider quitting everything and moving to a farm, which is objectively ridiculous because I would absolutely not survive on a farm. This is one of the episodes that I have personally come back to during many of those moments when being an entrepreneur and a podcast host felt really hard. Not because it made things feel easy, but because it reminded me that the hard doesn't mean wrong and the struggle doesn't mean failure. So, whether you're building a business, a career, a body of work, or just trying to figure out your next move, this episode is a reminder that the mess doesn't mean you're failing. It's usually proof that you're growing. And also, I doubt very much that you'll hear many other podcasts explain entrepreneurship using the phrase sand in the crotch. So go check it out. Again, that's episode 313, The Hard Truths of Entrepreneurship with Dr. Darnell Jervey Harmon. Okay, friend, we're at the home stretch here, which brings us to the number 2 most listened to episode of 2025. And listen, friend, I know I have been talking a lot. I usually do interviews. I'm not used to talking this much, so thanks for hanging with me. But the number 2 most listened to episode of 2025, we titled, "What Does a Woman Have to Do to Be Believed?" And it featured E. Jean Carroll in episode 363. And friend, this was the episode that I was the most nervous about all year going into it, and the one that I'm the most proud of after the fact. It's a topic that invites strong opinions and lots of potential backlash. So my intention was clear from the start: to take this conversation out of politics and into something more human. Power, credibility, belief, and the double standards women still face today, while also creating space for E. Jean to share her story in her words. What surprised me almost immediately was her humor. Yes, the subject matter is heavy, and I have to imagine living it was even heavier. And yes, the stakes were enormous, and yet E. Jean is witty, irreverent, and genuinely funny. She talks about courtrooms, depositions, paper clips, clothes as armor, and the now infamous not my type moment with the kind of clarity and levity that caught me off guard in the best way. And there was another moment that really landed for me. When we started talking about the money, what she planned to do with it, I suddenly clocked how not glamorous her surroundings were. No flash, no glitz, no spectacle, just a woman being herself, very intentionally deciding how to use the money that she'd won. She talked about it not as a windfall, but as a responsibility, as resistance, as something to be redirected toward causes that mattered most to her. And finally, My personal best big time moment during this conversation is at one point, she referred to me as a journalist. Now, listen, I know that hosting a podcast isn't the same thing, but coming from her, it felt like a huge compliment because she is a journalist and she saw something in me they had never seen in myself. And really, at the end of the day, here's what I took away. I wasn't talking to a headline. I wasn't talking to a symbol. I was talking to a woman who had stared down power and won, and somehow managed to hold on to her sense of humor. A woman with a beating heart and a backbone of steel. And for me, that's what made this episode unforgettable. So if you haven't listened to it yet, go find episode 363 with E. Jean Carroll. What does a woman have to do to be believed? Okay, friend, we made it. We are at the top spot. So the number one most listened to episode, the best of 2025, is our episode on high-functioning codependency when being the strong one is slowly killing you with Terry Cole. It was episode 341. We released it back in September. And friend, here's what you need to know. This episode found me. It started with a text from one of my best friends, and it said something like, "You need Terry Cole on the show." Not a suggestion, an assignment. And then within about like a week or a week and a half, Terry's PR team reached out to me. So either my friend manifested it or Terry's team has some sort of psychic connection. Either way, I'm good with it because I went into this episode excited to learn from Terry, but thinking that the topic would be relevant for other people. And I ended with a self-diagnosis and an awareness that I had just learned something about myself that I truly needed to know. I later read Terry's book with my book club, and I'm proud to be one of the many who felt seen and maybe a little called out and ultimately better for it. This episode didn't just resonate. It changed something, not just for me, but clearly for many of us. And that's exactly why we chose it as our first episode to release on YouTube. Because if you're going to introduce new listeners to what this show is really about, the self-reflection, the discomfort, the growth, the moments that quietly rearrange things, this is the one. This episode didn't just perform well. It did what our best episodes do. It made us better. And that's why it found itself in the top spot. Again, episode 341 on high-functioning codependency with the one and only Terry Cole. Okay, one last reminder that all of the links to all of our top 6 episodes are in show notes if you want to search them or listen to them in order. And as we wrap up, I want to say this clearly and from the heart. Thank you. Thank you for being here, for listening, sharing, rating, recommending, and showing up for these conversations that actually matter. We have an incredible lineup ahead. Honestly, January alone could end up on next year's best of list. As we step into the new year together, here's what I hope you remember. There is no other you, and you are needed. Your work, your community, your relationships, they don't need some polished, watered-down version of you trying to fit into somebody else's mold. They need you. The real you, the bold, honest, confident you, even when confidence doesn't feel fully formed yet. So here's the challenge. Don't fake it till you make it. Choose it until you become it. Day by day, moment by moment if you have to. Choose confidence until the feeling catches up. Put one foot in front of the other toward what matters most to you. Because the only place I'm interested in leading you is right back to yourself. Back to that place of firm, bold trust that already exists inside you. So ask yourself, what would it look like? What would it feel like in your work and in your life if you trusted yourself firmly and boldly? What dreams would you chase? What risk would you take? Whatever it is that just popped into your mind, that's not random. That's your next move. That's where you get to take action, no matter what anyone else thinks or says. Because here, we're shedding expectations. We're setting aside the shoulds and we're giving our finger to the supposed tos. We're torching the old playbook and writing our own damn rules. Who runs the world? You decide, because that is woman's work.